Essentially, all that we do right now will result in two things, the high poly and the low poly mesh. Hopefully, if we did a good job with tweaking these meshes, there will be no gaps in both of them and no artifacts. So in order to start creating the low poly model, I will duplicate all that we have and move it to its own collection. But before we start working on the low poly one, I remembered that we still need to do one more thing, which is pretty minor and insignificant, but anyway. These metal details in the high poly version can be slightly smoother and high definition, so subdivision surface should be added, I think. To compensate the loss of the volume after subdividing it, I will select all the vertices, Ctrl A, and increase the thickness of the skin. I will do the same for this mesh, select it, Ctrl 1 to add the subdivision modifier with one level. Maybe crank it up to 2 or leave it at 1, and then Ctrl A while having all the vertices selected and crank up the thickness. Imagine that the same process has been propagated to the right side with two circles there, and now we're pretty much ready to create the low poly alteration of the roadblock. Next, we need to somehow turn this 3+ million polygons model into a workable low poly version of it. We can go ahead and add the decimate modifier. Alternatively, it can be done in RC with using the Simplify tool, but I prefer to do all the mesh operations in Blender where possible. So what this modifier does is reducing or optimizing the face count based on the ratio slider. We can see the current face count read at the bottom of the modifier interface. Right now it reads 3 million. And as we drop down the ratio, the number of polygons will be crunched down according to that ratio. So the ratio of 0.01 resulted in approximately 30,000 faces. If we wish, we can do simplification in a few steps. So first let's apply the decimate modifier and right away add it back. Now it should be slightly more responsive, so you can watch the effect in real time practically. Especially with the wireframe toggled on, it's very evident what's going on. And what should be the final amount of polygons depends on many things, on where you're gonna use it, on how you're gonna treat the textures, what features do you like to see preserved, especially when it comes to rendering of the silhouette. I think 3000 polygons for this model will be quite enough. It will be a peripheral asset, not super important, not a hero asset by all means. So 3K sounds good to me. One more checkup that I will do is enable face orientation within the viewport settings. That will allow us to see the flipped polygons in red. Haha, gotcha! Alt-N, flip. And here we have yet another one that should be flipped. Then we can merge the near duplicate vertices by pressing M and merging them at center like this. Maybe GG to slide some edges that were positioned dangerously close to other edges. And doing other mesh doctoring stuff, like deleting the stray vertices. Thankfully, they can be tracked and deleted automatically. We can do it by going into Select menu, then select All by Trait, Loose Geometry. That will pre-select all the stray vertices. Well, not all of them. I see that we need to adjust the selection manually, but then X and delete those vertices. Here we have another one. X, delete vertices. Disable face orientation. I think it looks good enough to be exported as the low poly version of the roadblock.